Ah, yes, the absolute mess that is California. I I'm having trouble with my headsets. There they go. Now they're working. We probably won't know the outcome of California's primaries for days, thanks to the absolute back-ass banana republic they run out there, voting by mail, blah blah, the usual. It's California. But we're going to take a look at it anyway. An Obama judge says the anti-Trump 8647 rally slash protest slash probably riot can stay. And by the way, it's happening right near the White House. Ain't that nice? And finally, remembering Muhammad Ali, whom I had the unforgettable honor of meeting at one time a long time ago in my life. And it is a day I will never, ever forget. The great Muhammad Ali. All right. Welcome. Hit that button. Welcome to the Jay Sheldon Show. Good morning, Danny. Why is June going by so fast? I know, it's already the 5th. The first week of June is practically gone. I don't know why, but it's happening that way, whether we like it or not. Unbelievable. All right, let's get into it here. Hello, Marilyn. Great to have you along. The Banana Republic by mail and why we probably won't know the outcome of the California primaries for days. Could be months. Who knows? In California, the term election day is really kind of a misnomer. It's at least election month. Ballots sent out for Tuesday's primary, May 4th, to every eligible voter. And that, by the way, is about 23 million people. Folks have been voting ever since. So Tuesday marks the end of a seemingly never-ending period that actually ended last night. But it is hardly something we would call election day. Well, perhaps we'll know the winners and losers. You might argue we can still call it election night. Oh, no, no, no. This is the left coast, folks, and things get weird out there. It could very well take weeks, even months, to get the final results. Now, it shouldn't be that way, but it is. In California, election results take weeks. This is from @America on X. In recent races, 40 to 50% of the vote is counted after election night. This is not normal. America deserves secure elections with results on the same night. Multiple occasions, the presumed outcome changed days or even weeks later. You wouldn't know it. The revisions usually benefit Democrats. Ooh, what a surprise. 2018, great example. Republican Young Kim leading her opponent for the race for California's 39th congressional district appeared to beat Democrat Gil Cisneros. She even went to Washington, D.C. to get the freshman orientation. Weeks later, they revised the count, and her win ripped from her hands. Kim eventually got to the House, is now running for re-election. She faces another Republican in Tuesday's primary, Representative Kevin Calvert, because of redistricting. Young Kim, led by Cisneros by 3,900 votes on election night, with 100% of the precincts reporting, according to the AP. So she lost by 3,000. 11 days after election night. Rinse and repeat, same story over and over again. Does that sound a little like Banana Republic shenanigans? It should, because it is. Believe it or not, the convoluted process is not by accident. It's by design. State lawmakers wanted to improve so-called access, but mainly just ended up appearing on the rest of the nation as rather stupid and incredibly inefficient. Not only does voting go on for a ridiculous amount of time, the counting almost guaranteed to go on for eons as well. By state law, the process of voting and tabulating ballots stretches far beyond the traditional single day of in-person polling. Universal mail-in ballots sent out to every registered voter up to 29 days before Election Day. Early in-person voting available at designated voting centers starting as early as the weekend before Election Day. Voting in Golden State effectively a multi-week affair. There is no such thing as Election Day. It doesn't exist. And you didn't get your vote in by Election Day? Not a problem. The Dems in California, hey, they got you back. Vote by mail ballots can be postmarked by Election Day, but received and counted up to 7 days later. Oh, yeah. Hey, we don't need results immediately following the vote. Of course not. Let's draw this process out. Let's make it last, let's say, how about a month? California's vote count often stretches way past Election Day because officials have to verify signatures, process millions and millions of vote-by-mail ballots, conduct required audits before they finally certify the results. And state law gives county election officials up to 30 days after the election to complete the official canvass, count every valid ballot, and perform post-election checks to make sure it's accurate. Frankly, this third world idiocy is a national embarrassment, folks. Since California very rarely a factor in the presidential race, it is virtually a lock to go Democrat in modern times. It's never come into play on a national level, but what if the future, the outcome in the Golden State could decide who's president? Would the nation have to live in some kind of weird limbo for 30 days, not knowing? There is probably no need to wonder if Steve Hilton gets through the general elections for governor or Spencer Pratt can do the same in LA, although the numbers I saw still had that idiot Bass leading by, 36% to 30%. Sanity in the California vote count, sorry, that's just apparently a little too much to ask for. Sanity in the voting in California? Oh, we can't have that. Speaking of idiots and liberals, here we go again. An Obama judge has shrugged off the Secret Service who warned him. Says anti-Trump 8647 protest can stay near the White House. Oh, yeah. Less than 2 weeks after a man was killed after opening fire on Secret Service agents steps away from the White House, and just over a month since unhinged Cole Thomas Allen was charged with trying to assassinate the president at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, an Obama-appointed judge has ordered that an 8647 protest be allowed to continue near 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue. And we all know what that address is, don't we? Monday, U.S. District Court Judge Randolph Moss issued a 2-week restraining order against the National Park Service, which was sued after attempting to revoke the permit of Accountability Now, the leftist anti-Trump group that's organizing a protest taking place 24/7 on NPS land about a mile away from the White House. These protesters had hoisted a giant 8647 flag at the site, and not surprisingly, the Secret Service considers that messaging to be a direct threat to the president. Federal officers ordered the flag be taken down, especially after the recent shooting outside the White House. Judge Moss, however, in his Obama-appointed infinite wisdom, decreed the 8040, 8647 messaging was a threat and wrote in his opinion, "The government seeks to squelch core political speech without any articulatable, much less evidentiary basis for conducting that speech actually threatens the life or safety of the president." Apparently, this judge thinks 8647 is protected speech. Deputy Director Matthew Quinn of the Secret Service wrote to the judge, said, "Based on my training and experience, I believe this term is as understood today, which can incite violence by others." Here's the judge. "The court doesn't doubt that political violence is on the rise and that it poses a grave threat not just to the targets of the threats, but the country as a whole. But the enormity of that problem doesn't change the meaning of plaintiff's speech, which, by any reasonable measure, merely advocates for the president's impeachment and removal from office. That is, to throw him out." Yeah. Nice try, idiot. Interestingly, this protest in question, taking place on NPS land near the George Gordon Meade statue outside a federal courthouse, right at the intersection of Pennsylvania Avenue Northwest and Constitutional Avenue Northwest. Judge Moss, who was appointed by Barack Hussein Obama back in 2014, works in that very courthouse. What a surprise. Meaning he's likely passed the ongoing protest on more than one occasion. He's seen it, no doubt. Just last month, Lincoln Memorial Reflecting Pool undergoing a much-needed refurbishment ahead of the America 250 celebration, vandalized with the 8647 graffiti. And of course, good old former FBI Director James Comey, indicted by a grand jury for a 2025 Instagram post which showed seashells that had been arranged, gee, I wonder by who, into reading 8647, which a prosecutor called a serious expression of an intent to do harm to the President of the United States. And yet this judge says, it's okay. No harm, no foul. I'll let it go on. Absolutely unbelievable. But wait, there's more. Oh, man. A white female doctor in Georgia was strangled, sexually assaulted, and then had her throat cut by a black man with 40 plus previous charges. And you know why you haven't heard this on any news accounts? because nobody covered it. Zero coverage from the Times, CNN, Washington Post, MSNBC, NPR, Reuters, Axios, ABC, PBS, every single one of them. And as just a side note, every single one of them covered the George Floyd incident. Oh, yeah. You get it now? Listen to this unbelievable woman's story of what happened.
To be part of me for the rest of my life. The day that I die, I will have this scar on my neck.
Jenna Salem lives with a daily reminder on her neck of a home invasion she survived in late January. DeKalb County police say it happened along Atherton Circle. They say the alleged attacker, Derek Bernstein, apparently cut off the electricity in Salem's rental home prior to the attack.
Immediately, it woke me up from the dead sleep, heavy footsteps in my hallway. My first thing I thought was that, oh my God, someone's in my house.
Salem says she then saw the attacker, who was not wearing a mask, jump on her bed. She says the attacker told her to take off her pants. Instead, she says she used that moment to try to escape, but the front door was locked.
He grabs me with his forearm in a chokehold, and he just starts immediately strangling me as hard as he can. I can't even make a noise. I'm trying to scream for someone to hear me. I can't even make a noise.
After she fought back, Salem says the intruder told her to go into the basement, where she says she was punched several times. When she begged for her life, Salem says the intruder sexually assaulted her. Then Salem says the attacker turned her around and grabbed her in another chokehold.
Something warm and metal on my neck. And as I go up and reach, in the second I touch it and realize it's a kitchen knife, he slits.
Salem says she was then stabbed in her chest with a knife, causing a lung to collapse. She continued to fight back, eventually causing the knife to break.
And know that I can't falter, I can't be weak, I can't lose my strength in this moment.
After another struggle, Salem says she ran out her front door and got a neighbor to call for help. Medics transported her to Grady Memorial Hospital, one of the places she worked during her residency. Months later, Salem continues to recover from the attack, but now with a new purpose.
I just feel so strongly that the only way that violence against women is ever going to stop happening, or that people are going to recognize that it is happening the way that it is if we speak out. When survivors can speak out when they feel comfortable and empowered to, and I do. I feel so strongly people need to know that this happened to me.
DeKalb County police say that Bernstein was arrested not far away from Salem's rental home following the attack. Jail records show he has another hearing scheduled for next month. As far as Salem, she says she's getting ready to move to another state to start another new job.
To be part of.
Wow. Wow. So he's got a court date. Yeah. We'll see what happens. Scum of the earth. Absolute scum of the earth. He'll get some liberal judge, and some liberal judge will just give him no bail. He'll run away. It happens time and time again. And like I said, you never heard that story, did you? Because nobody covered it. Not a single outlet. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. All right. Oh, yeah. Full-bodied, full-flavored, rich coffee taste, and never, ever bitter. That is Blackout coffee. Folks, they source premium specialty grade green coffee beans, specialty coffees grown at the perfect altitude, the right time of year, the best soil, harvested at just the right time. They work with local co-ops and American farmers to grow this high-quality coffee and then adopt a strict adherence to small batch roasting. They only roast your beans after you place your order, and then they ship them out within 24 to 48 hours. Blackout coffee, roasted, packed, and shipped with lightning speed, and they also have all these specials going on all the time. Head over to the link. It's in our description down below. Just drop that down. You'll see the Blackout coffee link there. Pick up a single bag. Even if you can't grind your own whole beans, they offer most of their most popular roasts in ground. They will grind them for you. Strong, bold coffee flavor. It's never, ever bitter. And if you're a first-time customer, you use the code J20, Jay20, and that'll get you 20% off your first order. Also, of course, if you're a repeat customer, they've got subscriptions, flavors, instant, cold brew, all the amazing flavored coffees there. Do check them out. And they've always got specials going on. You can get 20, 30% off. It's amazing. Great company to work with. We're proud to have them as a part of the show here. Thank you, Blackout Coffee, for coming on and hanging out with us. We really do appreciate their sponsorship. We're proud to have them as a partner here on the show. All right. Danny, I emailed them. Jay, if someone's listening from their company, please shout out. Tell them to make cappuccinos. I love them, and I bet they could make them so much better. I speak with the staff there quite regularly. I will pass that along next time I have a conference with them. Yes, indeed. Great idea. All right. Fraud-ifornia. We're picking on California this morning. And that makes me feel good because it's a good thing. They certainly deserve it. And Fraud-ifornia strikes again. The feds have busted a man behind one of the biggest Medi-Cal ripoffs ever. Ever. There is fraud, and then there is epic California fraud. This one is insane. An Orange County man named Paul Randall was already awaiting sentencing on federal fraud charges, one of 6 prior fraud convictions, when he hatched a new scheme that diverted more than $270 million in taxpayer funds. It is one of the largest California Medicaid, which is also called Medi-Cal, ripoffs in Golden State history. And after Randall pled guilty in April, he faces up to 30 years in the slammer when he gets sentenced later this summer. Now listen to this. Here's how this dude was living the absolute high life. The Department of Justice Attorney Bill S. Saley said this should offend every American taxpayer, that these people are taking advantage of the system. Seizing physical assets was just the first step in these efforts. As Saley, as he climbed the driveway of an 8-bedroom, 10-bathroom compound on an isolated Orange County hilltop to the former home of convicted serial fraudster Paul Randall. He was living like a king, as Saley said, off of us. 7 properties. A Mercedes G-Wagon, because of course you have to have one. Sneakers worn by Kobe Bryant. A Mickey Mantle rookie card worth $1.5 million. All of these things bought with taxpayer money, our money. Paul Randall pled guilty, one of the largest Medicaid fraud schemes in California history. Take a look.
I wish I could show you what's behind here, but I can describe. I've seen over a dozen Ferraris, Lamborghinis, a Bugatti, Lotus, and of course the obligatory G-Wagon. These are just some of the assets the government has seized from fraudsters who have taken your taxpayer dollars and bought some of these ill-gotten gains.
LA's top federal prosecutor, Bill O'Saley, showed us around this U.S. Marshal's warehouse.
It should offend every American taxpayer that these people are taking advantage of the system and enriching themselves.
These items had been owned by Paul Randall, who pleaded guilty to wire fraud this year in one of the largest Medi-Cal fraud cases in California history.
He submitted above $270 million worth of claims to the state of California through Medi-Cal. He was paid $170 million.
$170 million of hard-earned tax dollars.
That's correct.
I'm inside a government facility full of a few dozen very expensive vehicles, as well as some items that were purchased, according to the government, with your taxpayer dollars through various fraudulent means. I'm looking here at autographed, dated Kobe Bryant sneakers. These are actually worn in game, where he scored 42 points versus the Clippers, as well as a number of extraordinarily rare baseball cards. These are usually held in temperature and humidity controlled vaults because they're so valuable. Mickey Mantle, a 48 Jackie Robinson. This is wild.
Unfreaking believable. Randall and his co-conspirators took advantage of a temporary rule change in Medi-Cal, where they didn't need the pre-approval on certain drugs. Using a pharmacy they controlled, they billed Medi-Cal huge amounts every single month for expensive generic medications that normally would have required approval. As Sally found it unbelievable, somebody who'd already been convicted of fraud numerous times could manage to get away with it again for as long as he did. Obviously some kind of breakdown in the criminal justice system. And it's not like Randall was keeping a low profile. He seemed to be quite happy flaunting his ill-gotten fortune, 8-bedroom mansion. Unbelievable. Not everybody in California is crazy or a criminal. Representative Young Kim, who is a tough GOP primary battle right now with Kevin Calvert because of redistricting, he introduced the No More Shielding Corruption and Misuse in Spending Act. In February, it would establish a national task force to investigate and combat fraud involving federal dollars. Trump focused on fraud in March, named Vance as chair of the newly created task force to eliminate fraud. All kinds of things have been stolen at both state and national levels. The amount, the dollars are eye-popping. No word yet whether good old Governor Gavey or Minnesota Governor Walsey have anything to say about it. Don't hold your breath. It's very not likely. Danny says, I love my broke, simple life. We don't have it all, but my kids have more than I had, and they're healthy and happy. And I don't need that amount of money. Ain't it the truth? Ain't it the truth? All right. If you have young children in the room, I am going to suggest that you send them out on a little errand or give them a cookie and let them go play for a while, because I really want to play this because it's brilliant. But this guy's got a mouth on him. Now, we're all adults here. We've heard all these words before, but I am just giving you a extremely strong language warning. But what this guy has to say, you got to hear it. We are living in a world where we deny the truth. Why? Because we don't like the person who's saying it. Listen.
It terrifies the fuck out of me that we are living in a world right now where we deny truth because we don't like the person saying it. That is right now, we will take the convenient feel-good lie over the inconvenient truth all day. That's scary as fuck. That's Einstein saying, I'm not sure how World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones. That's that level of stupidity. That's where we're going. And it is rife on social media. Worse, half the shit you think somebody's saying isn't even them saying it. It's fucking AI. And that's scary because if you disagree with that motherfucker, every time somebody writes or says something that isn't true and makes it seem like he's the one saying it, you're like, I knew it, fuck. And then every time you see something you think is true, you're like, See? Right at the bottom, made with AI. Nah. Idiots. That's where we're at right now. So yes, I don't need to like someone or agree with them in order to recognize when they're speaking truth.
Because the truth never changes. The truth is the truth. I love this guy. I love this guy. I wish he had a little cleaner mouth, but what he has to say is well worth listening to. Absolutely well worth listening to. We live in a world in which we are denying the truth simply because we don't like the person who's saying it. Sorry, it doesn't work that way. The truth is what the truth is. Welcome, by the way, to June, which is Nuclear Family Month, if you live in Tennessee, Indiana, and a few other red states. Yep. Decades past. The start of June typically has stores and businesses, even government buildings, all festooned with rainbow flags, other acknowledgement, merchandise promoting the LGBTQIAPNLMNOP, whatever celebrations. However, as the winds of culture, political, civic leadership have begun to shift, so has the singular focus of June. Indiana Governor Mike Braun kicked off June by posting a proclamation that the month of June is now Nuclear Family Month. So the LGBTQ plus and all the letter folks, along with the counterculture warriors and all their allies, not really happy about that. He says, today I proclaim June as Nuclear Family Month in Indiana. As a father of 4 and a grandfather of 7, wow. I've seen firsthand the impact that a loving, committed family can have across multiple generations. As we approach America 250, the proclamation recognized the important roles that families play in shaping the future of our state and our country. Indiana will continue to support policies that strengthen families and help the next generation. The X announcement does include the replies from citizens or followers who gave support to Governor Brown's proclamation. And while it doesn't explicitly include single moms and dads, in reading the text, it doesn't exclude them either. It simply acknowledges the fact that the traditional nuclear families being recognized, celebrated, encouraged is essential if America expects to continue, maybe for another 250 years. How about that idea? It's a bigger lift for the single-parent homes, home with blended families, homes where the grandparents or the grandparent have taken on child-rearing responsibilities in the parent's absence. It does not exclude these types of families from the ability to also be strong, nurturing environments. You can strive for the ideal while you acknowledge that the reality can often fall short of the ideal. The trend of reclaiming June is becoming a thing, particularly in deep red states. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee signed a resolution passed by the General Assembly in Tennessee, establishing June also as Nuclear Family Month. Arkansas Governor Sarah Sanders proclaimed a more open-ended, muted, declaring the month of June as Fidelity Month. Says Arkansas's commitment to spiritual and civic institutions is central to the state's identity, and argues that cultivating fidelity to God, family, community, and country contributes to humans' flourishing and supports a healthy, stable, and well-organized society. In Alabama, Governor Kay Ivey also issued a proclamation supporting traditional families. She declared June as Strong Families Month. How about that? Now, Pride is still going on in all these states and most others. Central Alabama Pride has a whole list of events going on in Birmingham, surrounding areas. Nashville Pride doing the same. But there's an admission that the huge corporate sponsorships, funding that used to characterize these events, has pretty much dropped off to almost nothing. The funding for more widespread pushes, initiatives across the board, they are scraping the bottom of the barrel for funding on these platforms. Of course, these organizations are blaming the federal and state government's removal of DEI in government funding and structures. The bottom line is that hopping on the Pride train is no longer financially lucrative for these corporations, so they've stopped doing it. Whether that's because they no longer get an automatic boost in funding because of the clawback of DEI, or the customer base just no longer matches the sentiment remains to be seen. We don't know yet exactly. The backlash Target, Cracker Barrel, other retailers experienced, still haven't recovered from. It's an indication that family-friendly will always be the purview of traditional and nuclear families, and corporations may finally be getting wise to this. Hopefully they will. All right. Patriot Mobile, our Christian conservative mobile service provider, the one you need to be using. So you keep your phone, you keep your phone number, everything stays the same except where your bill every month goes. And that is to a company that supports our beliefs. They support organizations that believe in the right to life, the First and Second Amendment. These are great folks, Patriot Mobile. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that right now.
When you choose Patriot Mobile, you're not just picking a wireless provider. You're choosing a company that shares your values. It's easy to switch, and you can keep your number, your phone, and most importantly, your values. With Patriot Mobile, you get the power of nationwide coverage on all 3 major networks. That means wherever life takes you, we've got you covered on the same reliable networks you already know and trust. And when you need us, we're here for you right here at home. Our customer service is 100% US-based because we believe that support should come from people who understand you and your values. At Patriot Mobile, you're not just another call, you're a priority. In today's world, where you spend your money matters more than ever, every dollar is a vote for the kind of future you want to build. Join the thousands of Americans making a difference with every call, every text, and every connection. Choose a company that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Yes, indeed. And if you just pull down that description right up at the top of the list, you'll see Patriot Mobile. It's patriotmobile.com/J, J-A-Y, very easy to remember. If you sign up right now using that link, you'll get your first month free. I'm paying for your first month's bill. How about that? You like apples? How about them apples? patriotmobile.com/J is the link. It's in our description. If you forget, get over there, get signed up. They're customer service people. They're U.S.-based. They're fantastic folks. They are there to put you in a plan that works for you, saves you money. They're not there to upsell you. That's not their job. They're there to help you. They're great. I've spoken with a bunch of our listeners and viewers who have signed up, and they have had to use the customer service for one reason or another, and they said they've been fantastic. So thank you, Patriot Mobile. All right. Good to have you along for the ride. We appreciate you being a partner here on the show. Canada. Let's pick on Canada for a little bit, shall we? I actually remember this story. It was a while ago, but it's back in the news. They need a real reckoning for this whole mass graves hoax. You remember this? 5 years after Canadian Liberals incited a huge moral panic about mass graves of Indigenous school children, almost no one will admit that it actually happened. 5 years ago, a moral panic gripped Canada over a story that was very obviously fake, but so perfectly confirmed the biases of anti-Catholic liberals. Nobody in the media, political establishment, would bother to check on whether or not it was true. They just accepted it. Now, this, of course, was the hoax about the purported discovery of mass graves of indigenous children at what was once a government boarding school run by the Catholic Church. In late May of 2021, and this is a native Canadian tribe, so their name I will never pronounce correctly, Tecumseh First Nation. Sorry, I know I butchered your name. I apologize. They claimed that the ground penetrating radar had revealed hundreds of graves near the site of a former school in Kamloops, British Columbia. Tribal leaders cited the radar survey as proof that scores of Indigenous Canadian children had been buried in unmarked graves at the school. At the time, it was shocking. We were told about a residential school system the Canadian government mandated from the 1860s to the 1990s, a system that some cases forcibly separated Indigenous children from their families and sent them to boarding schools run by Catholic priests and nuns, often in very rural, remote areas. And according to liberal mainstream narrative in Canada, these schools were places of abuse, cultural genocide. And to those crimes, the tribal leaders in Kamloops declared could now be added the horror of heretofore hidden mass graves. Now, there were a million reasons when this story came out to be skeptical. At least, or not the least of which, was the preliminary nature of the findings and the fact the site in question had not been excavated for human remains. But major corporate media outlets like the New York Times, CNN, NPR, The Globe, The Mail simply repeated the central claim as a fact, stating unequivocally that the remains of 215 children had in fact been found in Kamloops. CNN called it a gruesome discovery. The Post said the mass grave story had dragged the horror of Canada's mistreatment of Indigenous people back into the spotlight. The only problem was, it isn't true. There were no mass graves. There was no gruesome discoveries. No conspiracy of bigoted Catholic schoolmasters. That has been obvious for years. If it wasn't obvious enough when the story first appeared, and now only 5 years later, the Globe and the Mail, one of the major media outlets that helped perpetrate this whole hoax, has published an editorial mea culpa on the whole affair. Quote, 5 years after the startling announcement there were hundreds of possible unmarked graves near a residential school in Kamloops, BC, there's been no public confirmation of the discovery of any human remains, the editors write. The media, including the Globe and Mail, did not initially scrutinize, much less challenge that assertion. And the editorial goes on to say how the language used to discuss the claims about mass graves moderated as time went by, becoming less certain, more qualified. But the evolution of language does not erase the initial failure of journalism. That, according to the Globe and Mail. Vigilante violence broke out across the country. Dozens of Catholic churches were set on fire by arsonists, vandalized in the wake of this Kamloops story. historic churches that belonged to indigenous congregations, as well as churches that had absolutely no connection whatsoever to these residential schools. And the ones that weren't burnt to the ground often had charged the priests scrawled in red paint on the walls. And what did Trudeau say? Squat all, nothing. Typical. Most local authorities said nothing. Executive Director of the BC Civil Liberties Association posted on X, burn it all down. Oh, yeah. No excavations were ever undertaken at Kamloops at the insistence of the very tribal leaders who had made the original accusations. For Canada's establishment left, the story was just too good to be checked. They didn't want to know the truth because they liked where it was going. Confirmed every liberal assumption and prejudice about the Catholic Church, valorizing Indigenous Canadian tribes. It also proved, in air quotes, that Canada, like the U.S., was a systematically racist country. The mass grave hoax in Canada stands as a reminder of exactly how the left, given the right circumstances, can gin up moral panic. The real story about Canada's mass graves, then, is not about residential schools or racism or even the Catholic Church. It's about how liberals are willing to demonize their opponents with outlandish fabrication and lies, destroy free speech under the control of law, incite violent mobs to punish perceived evildoers, and years later, when the dust clears and it turns out the whole thing was a hoax, well, you just might get one editorial that admits that. Frightening, huh? Absolutely frightening. Hang on just one quick second while I get this thing queued up here. There we go. One of those. All right. On this date, 10 years ago, we lost an amazing American hero, and his name was Muhammad Ali, the greatest. Indeed, he was. 10 years ago today, he was 74 years old. As I said in the beginning of the show, I had the unbelievable honor of meeting and shaking hands with Muhammad Ali. I was hired to, at that time we used videotape, I was hired to videotape a birthday party for a very high-level ABC sports person. We'll leave it at that. And their birthday party was taking place on whatever that boat is that goes out of New York Harbor and goes around the Statue of Liberty and then comes back. They had rented the whole boat and invited all kinds of celebrities. This was a giant television producer of sports programming. And I met Malcolm Jamal Warner. I met Rona Barrett, whom you probably don't know. She, at the time, was a very famous celebrity gossip columnist and TV personality. But at some point, Howard Cosell and Muhammad Ali showed up to get on the boat for this amazing ride around New York Harbor. And they came up past me. Who's the musician guy, Paul Schaefer from Late Night with David Letterman? He was also there. He was fantastic. He actually approached me and said, "Hey, what are you guys doing? You know, how does this work? What do you do?" He was very personal. He was fantastic. I love Paul Schaefer. He was such a great guy. But anyway, back to Muhammad Ali. He came up. I shook his hand and I said, "An honor to meet you, sir. It's been it's really fantastic to get the chance to shake your hand and say hello." And he said, "Oh, it's very nice to meet you too." Sadly, he had already begun to be affected by whatever it was that he had. It was a thing where you shake. I don't think it's what Michael J. Fox has. It might have been, but I can't recall. But Howard Cosell, he was pretty much holding on to Howard to steady himself. It was a shame to see this man who had done so many amazing things in the boxing ring and in life in general, in that kind of condition. He was still fine. He was still lucid and able to get around on his own for the most part. But I'll tell you, of all the amazing moments, I can't remember how old I was. I would say early 20s, I think. Maybe even late teens, early 20s. But what an absolutely amazing experience to get to actually meet the greatest of all time. And he'll tell you that himself, Muhammad Ali. I found this piece of footage, and I think probably in a nutshell, this exactly shows you who Muhammad Ali was. Take a look. Wow. Wow. What an absolutely amazing man. And imagine what that kid, who these days, I don't know, he's got to be probably, what, in his 30s or 40s by now? Wow. What a memory. Denny says, "I'm glad Mike's at work. Just saying that name gets him all hyper, running all over the house, trying to box everyone, and everyone thinking he's Muhammad Ali." Well, if you're going to be somebody, you could do a lot worse than Muhammad Ali. Like I said, one of the most amazing moments of my life, getting to meet the legend himself. Absolutely incredible. All right, my friends, thank you so much for popping by. Hey, if you'd like to donate to help keep the show free and keep the lights on, there's a link to our PayPal. It's the top link in our description. You can use that. Send us whatever you can afford, $50, $100, $1,000. I would marry you if you send us 1,000. Just kidding, but I'd think about it. Anyway, we've got some great sponsors, Blackout Coffee, Patriot Mobile. Check them out too and get some great deals. We'll be back again tomorrow, and I will see you all at that time for the latest edition of The Jay Sheldon Show.